Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Succession Planning 101. This webinar is jointly sponsored by National RTAP and AASHTO MTAP. So we're so glad you're here and you're going to learn a lot about succession planning from a panel of experts. Let's get started. First, a little housekeeping. You can ask questions or share comments in the chat function throughout the webinar. During the presentation portion, participants will be muted. Please keep yourself muted, but during the question and answer portion, you may raise your hand and you'll be called upon to unmute yourself to ask a question or share a comment. This webinar is being recorded, and the slides and the recording will be posted on the National RTAP webinars page within a week of today. You will receive a brief survey tomorrow about your feedback on this webinar and your ideas for future webinars. So we hope you'll fill that out and give us your feedback. We appreciate it. You've probably all taken at least one Zoom webinar by now, but in case you're unfamiliar with it, there's the mute, unmute, your video on and off, and there's where the chat is. There's also a question and answer. You can do reactions, to raise your hand, etc. So onward to the webinar. We have a wonderful panel of speakers today, all talking about succession planning from their own perspectives, and they'll be introduced when their portion comes throughout the webinar. So here you'll hear from everybody. Now, in case you're unfamiliar with National RTAP, we're a technical assistance TA center funded by FTA through the Section 5311 Rural Formula Program. We provide free training materials and technical assistance, including webinars, to rural and tribal transit providers and to state RTAP programs. We're governed by a review board, 14 state DOT and rural and tribal transit agency managers from across the country. Some of them are the panelists for this webinar today. You can learn more about National RTAP at nationalrtap.org. There's a screenshot from our homepage. National RTAP also leads a website and a library called TACKLE, the Transportation Technical Assistance Coordination Library. Doesn't really have too much about succession planning, but it has everything you need to know about transportation coordination. And it has resources from FTA and all of its technical assistance centers. So now I'm going to introduce my co-host, Rebecca Ainger, who is with AASHTO MTAP. And not that she's going to be talking about her succession planning journey, but I think she has done an amazing job. She's been at AASHTO MTAP for less than a year and does probably one of the best newsletters I've seen in the country. So she just jumped right into her role. Now I'll go up and let Rebecca tell you a little bit about AASHTO.
Thank you, Kara, so much for those very kind words. I'm very pleased to be here today with all of you. Like Kara said, I am here on behalf of AASHTO, which is the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. AASHTO, for those who may not know, supports the DOTs of all 50 states, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. So specifically, I am the program manager for transit policy and technical assistance at AASHTO. So I support the work of our Council on Public Transportation, which is one of AASHTO's policy-oriented modal councils, as well as its associated technical service program, which is widely known as MTAP, or the Multi-State Transit Technical Assistance Program. AASHTO's work is state-led, and MTAP has a great steering committee led by our chair, who is Don Chartok of Washington State DOT, and our vice chair, Caitlin McClanahan of Tennessee DOT. MTAP drives our transit technical resources development at AASHTO, and we're always very glad to partner with National RTAP, who is a wonderful resource and group of people putting out some great technical service, some great education. So I'm very pleased to be here today to join in with this webinar. I recently changed roles at AASHTO, so I personally find this information all very timely. So I'm very, again, pleased to join everyone here today. And Kara, back to you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. And I'm pleased that we have a lot of state DOT staff with us here today, including state RTAP staff. So let's start talking about succession planning. What is succession planning? We like at National RTAP this definition found in TCRP's Strategies to Attract and Retain a Capable Transportation Workforce. The link is there. It's a great resource to read in general. And they say succession planning is the strategic process of identifying and preparing high potential employees through mentoring, training, and job rotation opportunities to replace staff upon exiting the agency. So that sums it all up, and that sort of sets the stage for our succession planning training that we developed. How do you find it? Well, if you go to nationalrtap.org, you'll see what we call our purple mega menu. If you mouse over resources, there's our cute little mouse, and click on National RTAP e-learning. There you go. And you can also get to it directly with that link, elearning.nationalrtap.org, or also in our resource library. So you'll find both the e-learning course and the templates. It's easy, and we also have a search bar on every page of our nationalrtap.org website. So you can just type in succession planning and you'll find it. And if you really can't find it, just let me know at info@nationalrtap.org. Happy to help you. So this is a new e-learning course. It's e-learning only, other than the templates, and it has a number of objectives. The course will help learners understand why succession planning is necessary. It will help managers develop a plan that supports the agency's mission, vision, objectives, and their strategic plan. Succession planning doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's part of the larger picture for all transit agencies and organizations. This course will help you incorporate succession planning into your other efforts and involve all the key stakeholders, all the staff, managers, board members, the public, anybody who needs to be involved. For every role in your agency, this course and templates will help you understand the role's responsibilities, the skills, and the knowledge needed for success while transitioning. It will help you create a succession plan for all roles and use that plan for onboarding, mentoring, and ongoing professional development. Succession planning is not just for the day that somebody starts a new position. It's something that goes on and on. So another part of the course is about the succession planning process. So this is basically 4 easy steps. And the first step, like with any plan, is preparation. If you have good job descriptions, think about staff who are likely to retire or change positions, maybe get promoted to something else. Step 2 is about skills. Think of the skills and key competencies needed to succeed in the position. I'm the knowledge and resource manager, so I have to be skilled in knowledge management for all skills, from drivers to executive directors. Everybody has key skills and competencies. Step 3 is training. Training. You need to identify the training or experience needed to acquire the skills and offer training and mentoring to staff. Just like you're on this webinar today, you're receiving training. We'll record this webinar. You can then again offer it to anybody who wasn't able to attend it. So National RTAP, AASHTO, MTAP, we all have lots of training, so take advantage of ours. It's free and always available. Step 4 is creating the succession plan. Whether the position is offered to an internal or external candidate, a written succession plan should be developed. And this training, the e-learning course and the templates will easily walk you through that. It seems daunting, and it seems like it's where do I begin? So this training is where you begin. So this is one of the pages in the course. What should be included in a succession plan? I'm going to show you a little bit about the e-learning, but I did want to highlight some of the pages that really gets to the gist of it. So what you should really make sure you include is the organization environment description. Start with the organization's mission, vision, values, structure, and governance. Start from the top, including an organizational chart that shows lines of authority. If somebody leaves, you want to know, who supervises that person, and will that person be taking over some of the roles or responsibilities, and if not, who among that department can. You should keep current position descriptions. Can't stress that enough. The roles each position has in everyday operations and in emergency operations as well. The key competencies. This is important. The procedures for appointing acting or interim roles. Suppose somebody goes on maternity or paternity leave, or even a very long-term vacation. Somebody needs to still take care of the responsibilities of that person. And if somebody leaves abruptly, what are the high priority jobs that need to be filled as soon as possible? You need backup plans in case of absences. We knew with the COVID-19 pandemic, there were a lot of absences, so succession planning can help with something like that. And principles for filling from within. A lot of times you have the talent you need right in your organization, and that's really a great place to start. Communications plan for notifying the organization and external stakeholders if leadership changes, and that means the head of agency, key management roles, or even the board. Sample job announcements, especially if you have to use them very quickly. And information on training. So not just any training, but training matched to the skills needed for each position. What training do you have for drivers, for dispatchers, for marketing staff, etc. So now let's take a look just a little bit, because I do want you to actually go on this, at what the e-learning course looks at. So I'm going to log in as me. And if you don't have a login, you can create an account. But I do have an account, so here it is, and it's right up at the top. It says I finished it, but that's okay. You can take these courses as many times as you want. So there's a little arrow and hit launch. Really, really easy. It asks if I want to look at it from the last slide I viewed. Yeah, sure. All right. But I'm going to go to the previous slide. This I didn't turn on the sound, but it will talk to you, and that's why I paused. The sound in the e-learning, sorry about that. But we have some sort of fun but really meaningful quizzes that once you're taking this course, you can use to learn. So do assess skills, of course. If I say do only hire externally, nope, it won't let me do it. It will keep bringing it back to the front until it's right. So this one, click on the people, it will tell them what they say. So that's sort of neat. This I just want to show you because you're going to hear from Bren and Laura later in this webinar. So their videos, a shorter version of what they're going to talk about, is included in the course. And you saw that, some of that. And I just want to show you. This is sort of neat too. We have some scenarios. Hi, I'm Linda. Today is my first day on the job at ABC Transit. Which experience would you prefer? Well, I have an office and my director stopped in to briefly welcome me and left before I could even ask anything. And I'm not even connected to email and don't know who to ask about it. What a first day. But here's another one. This is going to be a wonderful experience. The assistant director held a meeting for me to get to know the management team and set up a one-to-one so I can meet each of my staff members. I have a detailed written plan about the roles and responsibilities, and someone from IT is coming this afternoon to make sure all my tech is set up correctly. I can't wait to get started. So this is the kind of thing you'll find in the Succession Planning 101 e-learning course. You also see the templates. So Johnny will talk more about that, but they will download. And you'll see here it downloads right to your screen, which is nice and easy. And then you can take them and take it from there. Okay, so at the end of the presentations, you'll have a chance to ask more about the e-learning course if you want. We have some additional resources. Our Transit Manager's Toolkit, and there's the URL, has a good section about succession planning. A lot of it is included in the e-learning course too, but this is a good way if you don't want to take the e-learning or just to get a brief summary. A lot about succession planning can be found there. We also did a succession plan to transit Twitter chat, say that 10 times fast, with a succession planning subject matter expert, Mike Mowry. And there's a lot of good questions and answers and advice in that Twitter chat as well. It's a long link, but the link is included. And like I said, we will post this presentation on our website, so everything is clickable. Now, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Johnny Cusack, who is the transit director for the city of Sioux Falls. And she's had her own big succession. She went from a rural transit agency to an urban transit agency. She's also a member of our review board. So that was a succession to get her on the review board. And since she's done that, she's done so much for us. And I know she's done a lot of really great things for the city of Sioux Falls. So she's going to talk to us about how to use the templates.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Kara said, my name is Johnny Cusick. I'm the Director of Transportation for Open Plains Transit. Excuse me. I'm also a certified community transit manager, and I also am a hands-on Chief Operations Officer, and I volunteer as the Executive Director for Senior Services Incorporated, which is the 501c3 nonprofit organization whose umbrella Open Plains Transit operates under. We provide intercity and demand response services in some of the most frontier areas of Western Nebraska, and we do it with a pretty small crew of employees. The reason I mentioned all of this is just that it is just really an integral part of our operations of having a succession plan in place for all of our positions in our organization. And we really strive to have it in place and to keep it updated at all times. The succession plan templates that have been developed and are offered by National RTAP, they're available in MS Word or Excel formats. This is really a personal preference and what works best for your organization or agency. What's important is that you have something in place, and these templates are really an excellent place to start. They're very user-friendly and just so easy for anyone at all different skill levels to be able to use. And they're also scalable, so you can adjust the sections if you need more room to add additional information, or you can delete sections that aren't pertinent to your organization, or to add sections that are important that may not already be included in the templates offered. These templates are used for multiple positions within the same form or separate forms for each position. You may find that you prefer using the Excel format with various positions listed across the top as column headers, and all the relevant information listed in rows below. Or you may prefer the Word format, which is what our organization uses. We keep all positions on separate forms in electronic and hard copy formats. That way, when a section needs to be updated, it can be easily done. We then print out the updated form for the applicable position, and we replace it in our succession plan notebook. So we have electronic and a hard copy of everything at all times. We have found that it is quite useful to have employees review the forms that are related to those positions or duties that they perform, and to offer their feedback and insight from their perspective. We have found that this promotes and fosters inclusivity within our agency, and also clarifies employee duties and the expectations for that particular position. So that way, it really opens up the conversation, and really, I think, allows management to really gather feedback to see if employees really understand what the expectations and the role that they play within the organization. So it's just a great opportunity for team building, I think, as well. It may be helpful to also include media contact information within the form for job posting procedures. Having a media list is a great tool in itself, but when you have an agency that possesses a very large service area, you may want media contacts that are more relevant for that particular portion of your service area. So you would want to notate the area that each media source covers with that contact information. And once again, you have everything all in one place. By the way, where are those passwords for your social media accounts? Where's the login and the password information for all of your accounts? How are you going to secure important information for all accounts while still including them in your succession plan? This is something that is very important to think about and to plan for, because a lot of small agencies, they do not have an IT person that they can turn to. Many wear very multiple hats within the organization. So really having a way to how you can pass this account information on is really integral to operations. We really believe that governing boards, organizational bylaws, committee information should be included in succession plans where this is applicable. What is the process for electing new board members, for filling vacancies, etc.? Where in the heck is that most up-to-date version of our bylaws? Does anybody know? Of course we do. A copy is right here in our succession plan. Go team. Electronic or printed versions should contain everything needed to provide the intended guidance, especially for those unforeseeable vacancies. If the coronavirus pandemic did not teach us anything else, it definitely taught us that many of us, that dramatic changes can happen in an instant, in a couple of weeks. It can last for years. And the best thing that we can do is to try to be prepared for the unexpected. I think that these templates are a great place to start and can be used by any type of business, organization, or agency. I think we're holding all the questions to the end, but I'd like to thank you for your time and attending today's webinar. Kara, back to you.
Thank you so much, Johnny. And I must apologize. I read the wrong introduction. So you also, I really do apologize. You also underwent a different kind of succession plan. You went from Panhandle Transit to Open Plains Transit. So even a name change like that is really a lot to take in for a succession. So that was a great introduction to the templates. And like I said, they're available both in the e-learning course and in our library. And we're happy if you email us at info@nationalrtap.org to just send them to you directly. They're available, as Johnny said, in both Excel and Word, whichever you prefer. And they really do have a lot of great information. So now we're going to start our panel session. And our next panelist just did a succession off the National RTAP Review Board. Our review board members usually serve about 3 years. And Laura Karff, who is the director of Cimarron Transit, was on our review board, but has decided to stay on to give this training, which we're really, really grateful about. She has overseen succession of many staff successfully and is going to talk about her own succession planning, best practices, and recommendations. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks. As Kara mentioned, succession planning seems daunting, so I take baby steps. And although our agency created a formal plan for the executive director's succession, I find myself taking small and what I hope are deliberate steps for the future of the transit program. Looking back, my boss always included 2 of us in training opportunities and meetings, important discussions, and encouraged us to build relationships with other colleagues around the state and region. So I was able to lead projects and given leeway to run with ideas, and my boss was available to answer my questions. These opportunities prepared me to step into his shoes. And when I became director, I realized we didn't have a lot of depth to support administration. Except for 4 of us, everyone is an indirect operation, either a driver or a dispatcher. We've been cross-training on a regular basis without thinking of it as succession planning. We were just supporting stable operation. Cross-trained staff to fill in during illnesses and vacation always makes sense and can help with future transitions. If we have people who have been injured on the job, we offer light duty and use the opportunity to educate and provide a new perspective of the program through tasks and projects they can do within their limitations. That said, we have 4 drivers to fill in scheduling and dispatching. At a few sites, we have dispatchers who are authorized to drive. And we provided opportunities for 3 drivers and a dispatcher to become part-time training coordinators. And our operations assistants can dispatch. Engagement is important. We created a safety and training committee, which is comprised of dispatchers, drivers, and operations specialists. The committee meets quarterly to review safety data, discuss what should be included in our tailgate trainings. We have discussions among each other, and they provide meaningful input, and they can have discussions among themselves. So we're encouraging collaboration between the staff. They now reach out for support to support each other. They're learning resourcefulness and problem solving for potential leadership roles in the future. And of course, you always notice the staff that are overachievers, those who show interest, ask questions, more than just staying in their lane. They manage themselves. However, keep your sights open to the unexpected opportunity. I misread a driver as bored or apathetic, and after a mistake led to an unfortunate incident, I decided to engage the coworker. And I asked if he'd be interested in attending a specialized training to enhance his skills, and then he could coach others. The transformation came quickly. He began taking initiative to reach out to support his coworkers. He wanted to be involved in our safety and training committee. He offered to help dispatching, and he acclimated pretty quickly as a fill-in. When a dispatcher left pretty quickly and unexpectedly, he decided he wanted to apply for the position. So by simply engaging coworkers in projects and training, you may find improved morale and at a minimum have staff with more empathy for each other's positions, more expertise, and you're creating depth for your organization. Focusing to strengthen skills for our 2 operations specialists so that someone other than me has knowledge after I retire, I'm preparing them in different areas. For example, one is included in 5310 meetings and discussions and grant opportunities, and the other maybe mobility management and drug and alcohol. Some training, I include them both, run ideas by them, trying to build their transit foundation. I tag them to represent me at coalition meetings and forward webinar opportunities to them on a FYI basis. And when one of the operations specialists came to me with forward-thinking ideas and a willingness to take on additional duties, well, to make her ideas a reality, I just sat down with her, explained my vision for her, asked for her support. She accepted the plan, and I promoted her to a senior operations specialist. So it's been great to be able to promote from within when the opportunity, occurs. If you assign meaningful projects that help your coworkers learn about the agency, regulations, processes, and the industry, we've seen team members taking more pride, becoming more engaged, ultimately more satisfied with their job. So I believe it's helping with retention. Simply delegating, empowering, listening to, and supporting staff has helped our agency move forward with succession planning. And
Thank you so much, Laura. That was such excellent advice. I'm sure will be helpful for many people on today's webinar. And like I said, Laura's shorter version of her video is in the e-learning course. Now, Bren Schweitzer, is who I was introducing before from the city of Sioux Falls, is going to talk about her own succession planning journey and give recommendations. And her shorter video is also available. So I will let her talk about what it's like to go from a head of one agency to another. It's a big succession.
Okay. Thank you, Kara. I really enjoyed Laura's her perspective on this, and I probably went into maybe a little more of the mechanics. And just thanks for the opportunity. The most difficult part of putting together a plan is getting started and finding guidance to develop a succession plan. As Kara mentioned, it sounds overwhelming. We all think there's time, and whether your change in operations is anticipated or unexpected, being prepared for this change will make a tremendous difference. Typically, you find those in the transit management or key positions as long-timers, sometimes known as lifers. The comfort level of doing your job and others letting you do so allow us to put succession planning on the back burner. So when reflecting on my recent departure from a transit management position with a rural program, the following would be priority to me in a transition, to make a transition as seamless as possible. Board involvement. Have conversation with your board of directors as early as possible. In joint agreement, all must be on the same page. Have you been mentoring a key person in your organization that has a desire and would be a positive replacement? It's okay to reevaluate this consideration and should be reviewed occasionally. Things change. Discuss timelines for replacement. Does your plan include hiring from within? What would your plan be for an applicant search? Put a reasonable timeline in naming the replacement. The unknown is not fair to an internal successor or the entire team. That direction's needed. The board must be aware of duties and responsibilities. The significance of their support is key to being able to work together to make the transition smooth and swift. Keep communication open with them and other project team members. Meet with the board and successor from within to ensure the system direction is identified. Review the budget and goals. Work with the board on goals to include projects that are underway at the time of the transition. Communicate with your contracts, federal, state, local connections, peers, etc., on your upcoming changes in collaboration with your entire team. Bring them into this process as well. A local news story may be very appropriate. Keep job descriptions current. I see that that's been an underlying theme, and I know that it's one of those daunting tasks we all put off. Frequent review and updating of job descriptions will be one less process to worry about at the time of change. If you have HR resources to assist you, that's best. These updates should be approved by the board as updated. So when that change takes place, that updated job description is in place. The job description should include, of course, position awareness, may include funding resources, regulations of federal, state, and local processes. But keep in mind that federal and state program management will dictate the program requirements. As an inside mentee, these processes should be understood and recognized. You can learn the program. You cannot teach people passion, empathy, and the value of a good team. And I would repeat that. You cannot teach people passion, empathy, and the value of a good team. Management position focus points could or should be the budget. The 5311 formula is challenging for many people to understand, and each state has their own play in this. Understanding it can be a long process. Whatever it takes to learn it, do so. This may be with state or local peers for their guidance. The National RTAP has resources that can help as well. Cultivating and nurturing local relationships is vital in any nonprofit service organization. Allow your team members to be a part of this. That includes being able to get their buy-in and dedication to your program. And I'm going to talk probably a little more about culture. This is a great opportunity to review your program's culture. If you have a positive work culture in place and it's working for your organization, continue it if possible. If it's changed, include the entire team in this change process. Without a strong culture, you have nothing. This will be reflective in your team support, where retention can be challenged, and it could result in a hostile work environment. You don't want that. A positive culture is reflective in your community's involvement and support, as well as ridership. So communication is key on every level. Having this national RTAP succession planning tool will be your greatest tool in your toolbox. Have your plan of action in place now, so when change may happen, the transition will be seamless and painless. Thanks for the opportunity to let me present.
And thank you, Bren. That really was some great recommendations and, talking it from a very high level. So now we've heard about succession planning for staff, succession planning for leadership. And now Rebecca is going to introduce our next panelist who will talk about succession planning at the
As we've heard today, succession planning is valuable across levels and organizations. So I'm glad to welcome Sarah Walton to today's panel. She is a public transit manager at Ohio DOT. She has over 10 years of career experience in state transportation work, and she transitioned into her current role about 1 year ago. So she'll be sharing her perspective from the State Department side of things. Sarah, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So like Rebecca said, my name is Sarah Walton. I work for the Ohio DOT. So glad to be here to share the state DOT perspective and succession planning. Within my organization, we have two teams, one that does program management and one that does compliance and oversight, and I manage the compliance and oversight team. I started my job about a year ago, and I had the benefit of having 6 weeks of overlap with my predecessor, which was really helpful because this role has, there's a lot of really important institutional knowledge within our agency, and we oversee about 60 different transit agencies from a compliance perspective. And all of those agencies have histories, they have personalities. So it was really helpful in those 6 weeks to be able to sit down with my predecessor after a meeting and say, okay, what was that about? Why did that person say that? Why are we treating this one a little bit differently? You know, and getting all of that institutional knowledge and not having to make decisions right away without that information and without that context. I came into this role with a transit background, but not necessarily a transit compliance background. So it was really helpful to kind of ease into some of the topics like drug and alcohol and procurement and ADA. I kind of refer to it as like training wheels. You come in, you learn the job, you learn the personalities, but you don't necessarily have to make decisions on day one. And that's something that we do pretty frequently at the Ohio DOT because there is a lot of institutional knowledge and very specialized knowledge when it comes to federal transit funding or compliance. One of the areas that I have struggled a lot with in the first year is procurement. And part of that struggle has been that we have a lot of documented policies, you know, things that define what is a sole source versus a single source and what's a joint procurement and all those types of things. But we don't necessarily have those procurement processes documented. So as I've sort of fumbled through some of that this year, one of the things that I've been really focused on is trying to document that through, you know, flow charts and trying to document how long these procurements take. You know, if you have to do a software procurement, you have to talk to IT, and how much time does that take, and who do you email in those cases? Because those have been some of the things that I have sort of struggled with in my first year on the job. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about was a big issue for us, and Kara talked about this in her definition for succession planning, and that is staff turnover. That's an issue that we've definitely dealt with in our office. Part of that's because people come to the Ohio DOT and the Office of Transit, and then they're exposed to a much larger department with all sorts of opportunities and all kinds of different jobs. So it's a great sort of launching pad into a career at the state DOT. But one of the struggles with that when you have that constant staff turnover is you end up becoming reactionary, and you spend a lot of time constantly training new staff. And in the compliance team in particular, we have a lot of folks that are very focused on one or two things. You know, they do ADA or they do Title VI. And so one of the things that I have been working on in my first year on the job is trying to get people exposed to different programs, to different topic areas. So if we do have a transition in the future, we will be able to, you know, sort of cover for each other a little bit smoother. And hopefully some of that institutional knowledge kind of carries forward. And so some of those are some of the kind of things that we've been doing just to sort of help that, because you're going to have turnover, you're going to have new people come and go, and that's good. If you're doing a good job of hiring and developing people, people are going to move on. So some turnover is good and expected. So just trying to figure out how to prepare for those moments. And that's it. Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Kara. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Sarah. You know, with a big organization like a state, there's really a lot that has to go on in succession planning and staff turnover, and you've really given us a good handle on all of this. So we've really heard a lot of great ideas from this panel. And now, if you're done looking at our paneling, it's time for questions and answers. So with questions and answers, we already have one in the chat that I'm going to read. And then after that, you can put it in the chat, you can put it in the Q&A, you can raise your hand. Or even if you want to be a little less formal, you can unmute yourself and start talking. But the question that we had from somebody is, how often do you review and or make updates to your succession plan? Since I'm reading, I'll start, and all panelists, if they want to, can put their pictures and their sound back on, because this can be answered by all of us. I pretty much, whenever something changes, if I get a new representative for a printer that I need to work with or anything, I just go into the document and plug it right in as soon as I know it's changed, because sometimes it's use it or lose it. If I don't do it right then and there, I'll forget it and it'll fall through the cracks. And even if I don't retire for 10 or 20 years, it'll still be there for if ever anybody needs it. So who wants to answer this next? How often do you review or make updates to your succession plan?
Yeah, I'd be happy to touch on that with our organization. Like I said, we are operated under the umbrella of a nonprofit organization, and there's a lot of agencies out there that do. We usually review our succession plan annually, but we really start digging into it and really doing some long-term kind of planning every time that we're looking at submitting a new application for funding. And the reason that we do that is, okay, has our organization grown? Do we need to add positions? Do we need to tweak the duties of this position and, change the responsibilities, the roles and responsibilities of positions? And so we really take a really hard look at it, about at least every 2 years, but we really look at it every year, but we really do a deep dive every time we're going to submit an application for funding.
Great, thank you, Johnny. Who else wants to answer the question, how often do you update your succession plan?
Kara, I'll just touch on it. I think all of us are in a position that we know that we should do it on a regular basis. I think the key to it is just getting in the habit. For many of us not having a succession plan and now perhaps using this tool that's really convenient, I believe will allow us to jog our minds accordingly and just make it second nature. Whenever you make a change in your operation, have that succession plan handy to update as you need to, whether it's bylaws, whether it's duties, rearranging, the job duties. I think it's purely habit, just getting into the habit. I think Johnny's plan is absolutely great and spot on. We just have to get into the routine.
Well, I think as it was mentioned earlier, Bren, is, if we don't schedule that time, a succession plan has a way of always getting pushed to the back burner. So it's just kind of like, okay, here's our deadline to submit a grant application for funding. Here's our deadline to review our succession plan. But I do have a question relating to this, but I'd like to see if Laura or Rebecca or Sarah have something to add.
All I was going to say is that annually for our executive director, they review it annually or as changes.
And Laura, while you're on, before Bren's other question, we had a question in the Q&A. Our organization would like to see the development plan created by you, Laura, for the internal employee you were able to promote. Would this be something that can be shared with today's participants, or is it proprietary and confidential? It's okay either way, just somebody wanted to know.
It was just I'd say more of a personal internal kind of thing, not really appropriate to share.
That's a good answer. Thank you. Okay, we did get another question in the Q&A. It's about the e-learning course. Does the course cover how to address needed cultural changes? Example, a negative view of the organization. Would this perhaps drive the need to hire from outside of the organization? Now that's a good question. While the course talks about hiring from within and hiring externally, it doesn't really address cultural the culture of the organization as some of our panelists did. And we're going to be, National RTAP will be doing a new type of training that will address this in the fall. We're going to do a LinkedIn Learn Along on the types of skills like teamwork, workplace culture, communication. And that might be a good way to get that kind of training. We'll announce that when we have it ready. But no, the e-learning course doesn't really get into that. It's more about the nuts and bolts of how to create a succession plan. So,
Sarah, I have a question that I would like to ask of anybody who is attending today's webinar or some of our panelists. One question that I get asked a lot is, how do you come up with a succession plan during a period of time when it's been so difficult to recruit and retain employees in the first place? You know, when it seems like sometimes it's a revolving door, or you don't have people that are even responding to your ads, or, they want to work from home as a driver, and, different things that just has occurred in the last couple of years. Does anybody have an answer about how do you come up with a succession plan when we're having a hard time just getting employees?
That's a good question, Johnny. And we do have another National RTAP training. It's a technical brief about recruiting and retaining. I think it's more for drivers, but it could be applied to other staff as well. That gives some very good training and recommendations on how to recruit in a competitive and difficult environment when everybody is in competition for a pretty much small pool of talent. So some of the recommendations we give is recognition of employees and incentives. There's really a lot you can do. So that's on our technical briefs page. And we've also, I think, included information on that in our transit managers toolkit, that there's a whole section on hiring. So that will be helpful. It's hard. It's very hard.
I would just like to say there, Johnny, I think you really are addressing something that is truly a need, especially in the rural areas where your resources are even more of a challenge to come up with. And I guess that kind of emphasizes even the greater importance of a succession plan, to have some of that understanding, and it isn't easy. So the more rural you are, I think even more of a challenge. But even working in the very rural areas, keeping the community involved and understanding. When I got my first rural transit position, I was on the board of directors for them and made a career change with the opportunity. So keeping those resources in mind.
Thank you, Bren. You had another question that didn't get to be asked earlier. Do you want to ask it now? I don't see any others in the chat. No? Okay, maybe I was mistaken. Does anybody have questions for Sarah, any of our state DOT participants?
I can kick things off if nobody has a question in the audience. This could be a question for any of our lovely panelists. Sarah's presentation is what made me think of this. But Sarah, you talked about some of the challenges in developing your own succession plan almost from scratch in terms of identifying who to go to for what, and sort of the action, the processes of your work. So I would just like to know, did you find any sort of best practices and how you went about identifying some of those key colleagues, or was there anyone in your office who sort of stepped up or was a great resource that sort of displayed how you can go about being sort of an informative or receptive colleague and helping people when they're new to a job?
That's a great question. So I supervised 4 people. When I came in, 1 position was vacant, and then 2 people had been there less than a year, and 1 person had been there for several years. So there was a lot of sort of fumbling through things. We did have a little bit of experience between us, and some of us had worked at transit agencies on the front line. So we had kind of experienced some of the ODOT processes from the other side. So we were able to sort of piece things together. And some of the other sections of our office, there's also some more experience. It was definitely a thing where you just walked around the office and asked people questions until you got an answer. It was a struggle. It's been a struggle to document things, but we're moving in the right direction. That's for sure.
I certainly know that feeling. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on sort of what a helpful sort of team or a cohesive team looks like, or maybe what a cohesive team doesn't look like, the sort of things that maybe people want to keep in mind when they're trying to build a better team. Maybe that gets a little too prickly.
Well, I like the quote on you can't teach passion, and that's true. If you love what you're doing and it shines through, and then it goes to the team too.
And I'd like to just make a comment on something that Sarah said that I found was really interesting. Sarah, coming from the front lines of transit in itself, and having that understanding, as you're going into your state's DOT, I think that's something that I've always found useful with being on the front lines, is trying to understand our DOT people and what their roles and responsibilities are, and what it takes for them to successfully be able to do their jobs on a daily basis. And I think that we receive a lot of respect from our DOT staff here in Nebraska, and I think that there's a lot of respect, I know for myself, to our state DOT people, but really trying to put yourself in each other's shoes. And I think, that has offered me a lot of insight into where we want to go, even with a succession plan sometimes, and the roles that we need to have even on the front lines to maybe better address the needs as they go up the ladder, so to speak. So I think insight is valuable.
Yeah, that's definitely a soft skill. You can't necessarily mandate that people have like frontline transit experience or state DOT experience, but having a team that has those various perspectives, it goes a long way. It really helps us from a compliance standpoint when we're trying to figure out how to right size our compliance and our regulations. You have the federal regulations, but you don't want to have it so burdensome that people don't want to provide services, right? You've got to find that. And so having people who have the frontline experience on our team is really helpful.
Excellent. And one of our participants also said, the more documentation of processes you have, the better off you will be. And another one said, you need to determine why people are not wanting to stay with your agency, so you can change the culture to be more conducive to them wanting to work for your transit agency. That agency does not have an issue with retention or hiring. They've done a lot of work internally and externally to show they are inclusive in their policies, marketing, training, etc. talk with staff who are there and do exit interviews to find out why people are leaving. Some things you can change, some you can't, but flexibility, promoting a team, safety, and inclusion culture is key. Look at where and how you are advertising is also very important. Letting people know what kind of person you want, not just what you want them to do. This all takes time, but they started a few years ago and it is paying off for them now when so many are struggling. And that's a great note to end on. We are at time, so I'd like to thank all our panelists for really sharing their time, expertise, and skills, and bringing this tool and your own knowledge to our audience. I'd like to thank our audience for being here today. Thank you on behalf of National RTAP and AASHTO MTAP. Here are our emails. If you have any other questions, we can also get you in touch with other panelists if you have additional questions for them. And looking forward to the next joint National RTAP AASHTO MTAP webinar. We don't know when it will be, but we'll start planning it. Have a great day, everybody.